In the entire history of warfare, one man has said this about one rifle: the greatest battle implement ever devised by man. That man was General George S. Patton, and the rifle was the M1 Garand. Not a tank, not an aircraft, not an artillery piece. A rifle carried by individual American soldiers. The same soldiers who landed at Normandy, fought through the Pacific, and pushed into Germany itself. But here's what most people don't know about that rifle. The reason it won the war had almost nothing to do with how well it shot. It had everything to do with how fast it shot. In 1944, the average American infantryman could deliver accurate fire at a rate that his German counterpart simply could not match. Not because the American was a better soldier, because his rifle gave him a fundamental mechanical advantage that no amount of training could overcome. This is the story of the M1 Garand, how a civilian engineer's idea became the backbone of American infantry power, and why a single mechanical innovation changed the mathematics of ground combat forever. To understand why the M1 Garand mattered, you need to understand what every other major power was using in 1939. The standard infantry rifle of World War II was the bolt-action repeater. Germany used the Carabiner 98K. Britain used the Lee Enfield No. 4. The Soviet Union used the Mosin Nagant M91/30. Japan used the Arisaka Type 99. All of them operated on the same basic principle that had dominated military rifle design since the 1880s. To fire each shot, the soldier had to manually operate a bolt, lift it, pull it back, push it forward, push it down, to eject the spent cartridge and chamber a new round. This took time. In combat conditions, under stress, with cold or muddy hands, a trained soldier could fire 15 aimed rounds per minute with a bolt-action rifle. That was considered excellent. Average trained soldiers achieved 10 to 12. The M1 Garand was semi-automatic. It used the gas pressure from each fired round to automatically cycle the action, eject the spent case, and chamber the next round. The soldier did nothing, except pull the trigger again. A trained soldier with an M1 Garand could fire 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute, consistently, in any weather, with cold hands or muddy gloves. That is not a marginal improvement. That is 3 to 4 times the sustained firepower of every enemy rifle on the European and Pacific battlefields. Now multiply that across an American rifle squad. A standard U.S. Army rifle squad in 1944 contained 12 men. All 12 carried M1 Garands. A German grenadier squad of equivalent size carried 9 Carabiner 98K bolt-action rifles and 1 MG-42 machine gun. In a direct firefight at close to medium range, that American squad could put 3 to 4 times as many rounds downrange per minute as the German bolt-action rifles. And this was before accounting for the MG-42, which the Germans specifically needed because their individual rifles were so limited in rate of fire. The M1 didn't just give individual soldiers an advantage, it restructured the fundamental arithmetic of infantry combat. The M1 Garand did not emerge from a large government research program, since it came from one man, John Cantius Garand, a Canadian-born civilian engineer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. Garand began developing his semi-automatic rifle design in 1919, the year after World War I ended. He had watched the reports from the Western Front, understood that bolt-action rifles were a bottleneck in infantry firepower, and spent the next 17 years refining a solution. 17 years. The M1 Garand was officially adopted by the U.S. Army on January 9, 1936, making the United States the first major military power in the world to adopt a semi-automatic rifle as its standard infantry weapon. Every other major power was still issuing bolt-action rifles. They would continue issuing bolt-action rifles for the entire duration of the war. The core of Garand's design was a gas-operated system. When a round was fired, a small amount of propellant gas was tapped from the barrel and used to drive a piston rearward, cycling the action automatically. The system was mechanically simple. far simpler than competing semi-automatic designs of the period, and this simplicity was intentional. Garand understood that a weapon carried by millions of soldiers in field conditions needed to work when it was dirty, wet, frozen, or sand-caked. The M1 fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip, a metal clip that loaded directly into the internal magazine. When the last round was fired, the clip was automatically ejected with a distinctive metallic ping, and the bolt locked open to signal the soldier to reload. Loading took approximately 2 to 3 seconds for a trained soldier. The weapon was then ready to fire again immediately. John Garand received no royalties for his invention. He was a government employee. The United States paid him his civil service salary, approximately $3,000 per year, for the rifle that armed America's entire infantry through the most important war in modern history. He was awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award in 1941. He died in 1974. Here is where the M1 Garand story connects directly to the Tiger tank story we told in our last episode. A better weapon is only useful if you can produce it in sufficient numbers. The M1 Garand's design made mass production not just possible, but straightforward. Total M1 Garand production during World War II, approximately 4 million rifles. Springfield Armory and Winchester. Repeating Arms Company were the primary manufacturers. At peak production in 1943 and 1944, the two factories combined were producing over 100,000 rifles per month. Compare this to Germany's semi-automatic rifle program. Germany did develop a semi-automatic rifle, the Gewehr 41 and its successor, the Gewehr 43. The Gewehr 43 was a capable weapon, roughly comparable in concept to the M1. Total Gewehr 43 production for the entire war, approximately 402,000 rifles. The United States produced 10 times as many semi-automatic rifles as Germany, and Germany's semi-automatic rifles were never issued widely enough to become standard. Most German infantry carried bolt-action Kar 98K rifles until the end of the war. The production gap had the same root cause as the Tiger tank gap. German manufacturing prioritized mechanical sophistication over producibility. The Gewehr 43 was harder to machine, required tighter tolerances, and demanded more skilled labor per unit than the M1. It was a better rifle in certain technical respects. Germany never produced enough of them to matter. Meanwhile, the M1 Garand was being produced in the same Springfield Armory facilities that had been manufacturing military rifles since 1794. The production line had been refined over generations. Workers understood the tooling. Quality control was mature. When the war demand spiked, the factory scaled. Winchester, primarily a commercial manufacturer of sporting firearms, converted a portion of its production to M1 Garands and was producing military specification rifles within months. This is exactly the same pattern we saw with Sherman tank production. American commercial industry converting to military production faster than Germany's dedicated military manufacturers could scale their more complex designs. The numbers look good on paper. The reality in combat confirmed them. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, American soldiers who survived the initial assault on Omaha Beach described the M1 Garand as the difference between living and dying in the chaos of the landing. The ability to fire multiple aimed rounds without breaking the firing position to operate a bolt was not a marginal advantage in the sand and obstacles of a defended beach. It was fundamental. Sergeant John Ellery of the 1st Infantry Division, who landed at Omaha Beach in the first wave, later described engaging German defenders. The M1 allowed him to keep his head down, fire, and fire again without the upward movement required to cycle a bolt, a movement that exposed a soldier's head and shoulders to fire. In the Pacific, the M1 Garand's rate of fire proved equally decisive against Japanese infantry tactics that relied on the aggressive closing of distance, the banzai charge. A bolt-action defender facing a massed charge could fire perhaps 2 or 3 shots before the distance closed too far for accurate aimed fire. An M1 Garand defender could fire 8 rounds, reload in 3 seconds, and fire 8 more. Multiple accounts from Pacific veterans describe banzai charges collapsing not because of machine gun fire, but because M1 armed defensive lines could generate enough volume of semi-automatic fire to break the charge before it reached the American position. The rifle's reliability under adverse conditions was equally documented. In the mud of Italy, the snow of the Ardennes, the coral dust of Pacific Islands, the M1 functioned. American ordnance records show the M1 Garand had one of the lowest malfunction rates of any weapon in the American arsenal. Soldiers trusted it completely, which is the most important practical metric for any infantry weapon. The Germans noticed. Wehrmacht after-action reports specifically noted the American semi-automatic rifle's effect on firefight dynamics. German infantry doctrine had been built around the assumption that individual rifle fire was slow and that the MG-42 machine gun would dominate the firefight. The M1 Garand disrupted that assumption at the squad level. The M1 Garand teaches the same lesson as the Tiger tank, from the opposite direction. The Tiger was a technically superior weapon produced in numbers too small to matter. The M1 Garand was a technically sufficient weapon. Not the most accurate rifle of the war, not the most powerful, not the most sophisticated, produced in numbers that equipped every American infantryman who fought. Germany's small arms program made the same mistake as its armor program. It kept refining toward perfection rather than producing toward sufficiency. The Sturmgewehr 44, developed late in the war, was arguably the most advanced infantry weapon of the conflict, the direct ancestor of every modern assault rifle. Germany produced approximately 425,000 of them. The United States produced 4 million M1 Garands. John Garand's genius was not that he built the best possible semi-automatic rifle. His genius was that he built one that could be manufactured at scale, maintained by ordinary soldiers, and trusted in any conditions the war could produce. Patton's assessment, the greatest battle implement ever devised by man, was not about the rifle's technical specifications. It was about what the rifle did to the arithmetic of infantry combat when placed in the hands of 4 million American soldiers. The M1 Garand didn't win the war alone. No single weapon does, but it gave every American infantryman a structural advantage in every firefight he entered. An advantage multiplied across millions of engagements over 4 years of war. That is what a war-winning weapon looks like. Not perfect, sufficient, at scale, every time. Next episode, the weapon Germany built that was genuinely ahead of its time. The Sturmgewehr 44, the world's first true assault rifle. It combined the range of a rifle with the rate of fire of a submachine gun. Every modern infantry weapon in the world today, from the M4 carbine to the AK-47, descends directly from its design. Germany had the right idea. They had it first, and they still lost. That story is next.